Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Gregg and Joe Turbo Show. I'm your host, Joe, joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Greg Minicello. Hey, Greg.
Yep.
How's it going? I love The Office. Love what you've done with the room.
Yeah. My cactus is really flourishing.
That's, you know what? They don't need a lot of water. That's the key.
No, that's
Not
why.
a lot of water. Yeah.
Hard to kill.
Today, we are taking a walk on the wild side, really, and kind of dipping our toes into a subject that I don't think we've really ever touched on here before. The scariest word in all of IT, network. And to kind of walk us through that and to kind of demystify it and give us a little insight into what that looks like, we're joined by Raul Gonzalez. He's a solutions architect with IBM. Hey, Raul, thanks for hopping on.
A pleasure to be here and ready to have fun with you guys.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Well, I mean, maybe we could just start off just kind of the basics. Who are you? Where are you from? How'd you get here?
Sure. So, yeah, as you mentioned, my name is Raul Gonzalez. I work as a solutions architect here in IBM in the area of network management. So I come from the network side, although I work a lot with infrastructure. And even though I just spent 3 years for in IBM, my whole business life, I've been working with network management solution, IT infrastructure solutions, and so on. I started as a network engineer with Cisco, with the Wi-Fi, wireless LAN controllers, and all these kind of things. And then I moved to the dark side of the vendors and I started working with management. Originally, I'm from Spain. I'm from Barcelona. I always say, based on my face, my accent, and my name, I'm from there. However, I live in the UK. So I've been living here almost 12 years, more or less. So I consider myself half Spanish or Catalan and half British now because I have both passports. And yeah, really, really excited to be here and talk about technology and talk about cool things.
Awesome.
And so during the World Cup, you're still going for Spain, I assume.
That's an interesting topic, to be honest. Yeah, because
let's get right into it.
Soccer, I like football, European football, I like soccer. But to be honest, I just really follow Barcelona, my local team. In terms of national teams,
that's right.
I'm okay. Obviously, in semifinals and finals, I watch the game as well. And possibly, I support more Spain than England. But if Spain is out of the question because they lost, I will support England, definitely.
I like it. How was it when Messi left? I live in Florida now, and he's come to Miami, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
But as a Barcelona fan, it's got to be tough.
I was, very sad that he left. He still had a lot of football on his feet, and very sad. But look, we had a couple of bad years. I think that now we are recovering. Now we have a new star, Lamine Yamal, that is 17 years old. So now we have something to look forward to.
Fresh blood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exciting. It does seem too like, I know this is not what we talked about discussing here, but since we're talking about it, it does seem though like Miami has kind of built like an old Barcelona team.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting. I have one of my best friends is Argentine, and he's very excited to come to Florida so that he can go see a game. So we'll have to schedule that soon. Anyway, enough about soccer, football. So let's get into, I guess, why we're here today. So again, like I said in the beginning, network kind of scares me a little bit. Greg, I don't know how comfortable you are. I'm sure you probably have more experience with that side of the house than I do.
Yeah, my favorite thing about networking is that it's brand new to me every single time. I learn it every single time.
Yeah, now with the new technologies, with the move to the cloud, we always think, well, we are moving our applications and our infrastructure to the cloud, but we are also moving the network to the cloud. People start asking about transit gateways, direct connects, express routes, all these different terms. This is networks, okay?
Yes.
Is software networks, let's say, because they are not physical routers or physical devices. Well, there is somewhere in the data centers, they are there. But now we are dealing with these kind of virtual networks. And it can be scary. It can be very, very scary.
And complicated. I think that's really what it comes down. Like all the scary bits are just how complicated that picture, that web can be. So maybe we can kind of zoom in a little bit. So I know you're a solutions architect for IBM. So that means you probably cover more than one product. But I guess maybe we can just kind of pick one that maybe you are most comfortable with, or one that you see seems to come up most often. And maybe we can kind of just dig into a little bit of how that product is used, why it's used, what kind of value it delivers, that kind of deal.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I could talk about lots of different things. I love to talk about technology. Also, I mean, the products I manage and also the products I don't manage. I love to talk in general technology. But as you asked me to pick one, something I would really, really love to talk about is a new acquisition. Happened like 1 year more or less. It came from a company called Pliant. Now we have changed the name several times. The last official name is called Rapid Infrastructure Automation. And it's important, this name, because before it used to be called Rapid Network Automation. So network, that's why it was under my, let's say, purview.
Mm-hmm.
But we changed the name from network to infrastructure because we realized that it was much, much more than network. We know that we mentioned networks can be scary. Every time there is a problem with an application, people will say the problem is in the network. So we all know these things. But with this solution that I really am very, very excited to talk about, is not only network, we can talk about infrastructure. We can talk about how we can, it's an automation solution, we'll talk in a second, but we can talk about how we can automate, the Cisco routers, the checkpoint firewalls, we can talk about these things, but also automating cloud, we can automate GitOps, we can automate ChatOps, we can automate even GenAI. I have a very, very cool use case about how we can enrich ticketing. So all these different automations that sometimes we don't tackle because it takes too long to build and I have other things to do in my day-to-day. Now with these solutions, I mean, they are amazing, and now you can start the project and you can build those different automations that at the end will make your life much, much easier. We always ask, when you talk with a customer, there is no single customer that says, I want less automation. They all want more and more automation.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they don't have the skills, they don't have the time to build those automations. That's why I'm so excited about this solution, because it's not only focused on networks, it can orchestrate and automate anything. But it's the tool that will make your life much easier. It's going to be the one that will allow you to sleep at night properly.
I need my life easier and I need my sleep. So you're speaking right to me.
Exactly,
yeah.
What I guess so. I mean, it sounds like you said, it makes your life easier. How is it doing that specifically? Like, I guess when you first are talking with a customer or with a potential customer, and you're trying to uncover, hey, is this going to be a good fit? I mean, I guess what are some of the specific issues that customers have that this kind of slots right in and says, hey, this way we make your life easier?
So, I mean, this solution, we're going to talk about that, is like what we call a low-code, no-code automation platform, but that also brings out-of-the-box integration that is very, very important. So with this solution, the main problem, when we talk with customers, we always find this disconnect. We all want more automation. But the thing is that each individual team, each individual business unit, it could be the team that manages Turbo, it could be the team that manages software like Instano or like Ceph1, it could be the team managing VMware or even the cloud. They all want more automation. But when they need to build these automations, most of the times, these people don't have the skills. Because if I'm an expert in VMware, I'm not an expert in JavaScript or in Python. Or maybe if I'm an expert in, in AWS, I don't need to be an expert in Ansible or in Terraform. So you have this disconnect where we have these people that are the people that need the automations. And then we have this other team that are the developers, the automation team, and some other, that they have the skills and the tool to build these automations. So what's the problem?
Would you say that second team, right, the people that do have the skills to build that automation, is that the coining the term or using the categorization of platform engineering?
Could be, yeah. Great. I personally call them the automation team. I know it's a very oversimplification, but those are the guys that have received all the requests. And the problem that we have is that we have the SMEs of the solutions and the infrastructure and the platform, that they have to talk with these other people, and there's always friction. Why? Because these other people, the automation team or what you mentioned, they don't know what you know. For example, if I'm an expert in Turbonomic, I know that from here I can create this group, and this group I can create the recommendation, and from the recommendation I can go to this cloud and build the automation. I know that very clearly. Yep. But if I need to run a step between somewhere, obviously these other guys, the automation team, they know how to use Python. They don't know
Yep.
how to use the Turbonomic API
Right.
because it's not their job. So with this friction, there is a lot of back and forth. Let's ask for this. You try to explain how it works. It takes a few months. These guys go back with some kind of prototype. It doesn't align perfectly with what you had in mind. So back and forth, back and forth.
A lot
6
of
months later,
iteration. Yes.
exactly. 6 months
Yep.
later, they come up with what you wanted, but 6 months later, your requirements have changed. So we have to start over.
You
again.
moved the goalposts? How did that happen?
Exactly. So that's one of the main problems that we have. We have this disconnect between the people that know what they want and the people that know how to do it. So how do we solve this problem? Because obviously we have this disconnect here. Well, imagine that you could have a solution that empowered, that allowed this team of people, the SMEs, the people that know what they need to do, to build their own automations. That would be amazing. But obviously it's very complex because they don't know how to use Python. They don't know how to use Ansible. Do they need to learn these technologies? Imagine that we could remove all that complexity. Okay, that's fine. But we still need to deal with the APIs of the tools, the Turbonomic API, it could be Instana, Ceph1, VMware, the cloud. We still need to deal with the APIs. Imagine that we also remove that complexity. Imagine that we digest that information and we give you everything that you need to build it. So if you want to create a new VM in AWS, we give you a box that says create VM in AWS. And also that you don't need to build the JSON file, these JSON objects that are so complex with all the things. Imagine that we could give you the information in a human readable format that allow you to, as the SME, no Python, no Ansible, no JSON, no nothing, no APIs, build the workflow for you. That's the problem that we're solving here. Those are the problems that we found with customers, that everyone wants more automation, everyone wants to deliver new services faster, but they don't have the skills, they don't have the time to learn these new skills. That's why we have this solution that I'm so excited. As you can see, possibly I'm very, very excited to talk about these things.
Brilliant,
because
I love it.
we are solving a lot of problems with that.
That is,
Good deal.
yeah, I mean, that's exciting. So it sounds like to me, and again, I'm actually happy that you cleared up whether or not it's RNA or RIA, because I've heard it both ways, even this year. In fact, I think I just had a meeting where we discussed RNA, so that we probably did that incorrectly. But so it sounds like to me, so is it almost like an integration point? So it sounds like you're saying it can draw on data from all of the different sort of periphery platforms, right? To kind of feed into it, to kind of give it that sort of big picture. And then, like you said, be able to then leverage the low code, no code approach to kind of leverage all of that data that you're getting from all these different places.
Yeah.
To
the way
build it out.
The way I position is like, this is a script. Okay, imagine that you know Python or Node.js or JavaScript or I don't know, Go, whatever. That's it. What we are allowing to do here is that script. So you can do everything you want. You can do an integration. You can integrate tools between them. You can run tasks. For example, I want that every 5 minutes, I want to make sure that all my targets that I have in Turbonomic are responding. If not, I'm going to open a ticket. I don't know, do any kind of weird things. All these things are automations that you could do in a script. Exactly the same can be done here. So one of the problems that we have with this solution when we talk to customers is saying, well, this solution can do everything. Well, I mean, with a script, can you do everything? Yeah, well, obviously there are some limitations, but yeah, it's kind of, you can do everything. Well, with this solution, it's exactly the same. It's like a replacement for scripting. Instead of you having to script and do all these for each loops, if else, switch case, and all these kind of things, now you can do it in a way that even any person without having to learn this kind of scripting capabilities or languages, they can do it. Yeah. But yeah, definitely, if we talk about use cases, yes, integrations, automations. A term that I love is closed loop automation, self-healing. This is one of the, if we talk about networks, this is one of the main, let's say, trends right now. How we can automatically, well, first of all, detect that there is a problem, and with zero touch, without human touch, solve the problems. That's one of the main use cases that we have here.
Yeah, I keep hearing you. The value, at least in my mind, is that you're removing that barrier of entry. You're making that learning curve far more shallow than like, like you said, I don't have to learn both products. I don't have to learn a specific scripting language. All of those different barriers of entry are being removed so that I can do the things that I need to do and very quickly iterate on those things. So I don't get to that 6-month point when the goalposts have moved and now this integration that I've built is no longer
Absolutely.
whole.
Absolutely. And there is something I always like to talk about. I always mention this with my boss. My boss is called Bill Craver, because we have two different ways to say the same thing.
Mhm.
I always like to talk about the lottery factor. What is the lottery factor? Imagine that one of your colleagues wins the lottery and leaves the
Yes.
company. Okay. My boss always talks about the bus factor. What happens if a bus runs you over? I
Right.
don't know why. I always prefer to talk about lottery. My boss.
Yeah, lottery is much more positive.
Exactly.
Just
So-
like the difference between eating your own dog food and drinking your own champagne, right?
I was going to say exactly that.
Yeah, right.
One
Exactly.
one does sound much better than the other. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to tell you which
Depends
one.
on if
but
you're a
one of
dog
them-
or not,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not making any assumptions
Exactly.
here.
Yeah, I mean, there might be dogs that like champagne as well. Could be.
That's fancy dog. Must be a French bulldog. That's what I
Definitely.
guess.
Yeah.
That's what I guess.
So,
So can
Sorry,
I
what-
ask too? I mean, is it like, so you said people can build these automations and they can do it, like Greg mentioned, lower the barrier to entry, make it accessible to everyone, make it user friendly, if you will. But has to be like some level of governance as well. And so like, is that built into, I mean, are you essentially able to build a library of automations within there and then have governance over that, almost like source control over your quote unquote scripts?
absolutely. That's why I was mentioning about this lottery factor, because imagine that you have now a group of people building automations in different places. Imagine that you have one guy that is the Python guru building these workflows on these automations. What happens if he wins the lottery? Let's not talk about the bus. Let's talk about the lottery. This guy leaves. Now, how do you maintain those workflows? If you had an option to, first of all, make these automations in a human readable way that anyone that understands those products can use those ones, and also that are in a centralized way where you have very specific and tight permissions and credentials, that would make everything much easier to manage. And this is how you mentioned about governance. I mean, one of the use cases that we have here is that we had a customer, financial services company in the US, that is using this product. And what they did is that they started with a business unit. I don't remember which one. I'm not sure if it was infrastructure or cloud or even network, but they started using this solution to build the workflows.
Mhm.
The way they work is that they have the typical pre-pod, staging, and production environments. And then they started having and some of the workflows production. When other teams onboarded the same solution, they started having access. What they could see is that they had some workflows in pre-pod that they could play, but they already have some workflows in production. And we were talking about a financial service company. That meant that as those workflows, those automations were already in production, they were vetted, validated to be used straight away. So imagine that you have a team and you have to build some of the automations. Imagine that you could have a library of already approved workflows that you could use for yourself. So yeah, this is something that we did there, and obviously there was a very big success, because again, how long does it take if I have to build this? If I already have this in the script, how long is it going to take for me to understand? Now that time is reduced to the minimum, because now you have that library that someone else built, but is internal, is approved, is in production, so you can reuse or you can tweak it to use it for yourself. So in terms of governance, this solution solved that problem. Plus other things about access. Again, typical thing. I have a guy that will work with AWS, but he's only allowed to use specific actions. He cannot work with security. He can only work with, creating VMs, for example.
Mhm.
In this solution, we can be extremely specific to decide which are the API endpoints that that person can access. So you can have AWS with thousands of APIs. You can allow a group of people to execute 2, 3, 10 of those APIs. And the same with the credentials. What you can do is either share your credentials, say, look, I have an admin access, and I share the credentials because I know that you can only use these 3 workflows or these 3 endpoints, Or what you can do is do not share me credentials, you use your own credentials, and then you will be allowed to do whatever you have access to. Very, very flexible, very, very, let's say, allows you to do exactly what you need without any limitation. So yeah, in terms of governance, Joe, this is a very good solution.
Yeah, it seems to be you can have very simple rules associated with these permissions, these certain APIs that you have access to, and you can get. It seems to me like you could also get pretty complex there as well.
Absolutely, it depends on elaborated more than complex, because
fair.
It's also because obviously what you do is group things together and say, look, you want to have access to AWS, one click, access to AWS. Now we have different divisions inside AWS. We have EC2, we have other options as well. If you want to have access to all the EC2 endpoints, again, one click, you have access. If you want to drill down and then define specific endpoints, you can do that as well. So yeah, it could be kind of more time consuming to build it, depending on when to do it. But talking about drinking your own champagne, one of the things that we can do is automate the automation tool. What that means is that you say,
is that safe? Are we going to create a black hole here? What are we doing?
Yeah, that sounds like Inception. That was how Inception started.
Yeah. So what we could do is, like, for example, everything that contains instance, because I know that this person is going to work with instances in AWS, automatically allow it. So what we can do is run an automation that goes through all the endpoints that we have, and every time we find something that is instance or any kind of code word, we can automatically allow it. Obviously, that's something that you have to review the thousands of different endpoints that you have. You could do it manually, but we can automate the automation tool to run that.
All right, cool. So yeah, I guess complexity wasn't the right word. I think probably more granular, right? You can have very simple, wide swath of permissions applied, but you can get into those individual permissions and select and choose as you need to as well.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, cool.
How does this is a big topic, of course. You mentioned it earlier, but the Gen AI piece, I guess how does that slot in? And I mean, I work in the public market, and so anytime you're working with governments, Gen AI is a bit more touchy in terms of I think it's still so new for a lot of folks that it's maybe a little scary. So how do you have those conversations?
So when I talk with customers, obviously everyone is extremely excited about Gen AI and the use cases and so on. But the two main, let's say, I wouldn't say complaints, but kind of concerns, is that, first of all, real use cases. Because we talk about Gen AI and sometimes say, okay, how can I apply this to my company? How can I benefit from that? And obviously we have products like Watson X for code assistant that is very good because it allows you to code faster, and there are other use cases, but some customers struggle. The second thing is that, okay, now that I know that I have a use case, imagine that we have a use case, we can talk about that in a second. How do I implement that? Because I don't want people going to the Watson X or the ChatGPT prompt and start asking questions. I want to automate that. So how can we accelerate the adoption of Gen AI? So for this second question, the second concern, obviously, if you want to automate something, the solution we're talking, rapid infrastructure automation, is going to help you. And one of the solutions that we have integrated, that means completely digested with all the building blocks, all the actions that you can run without the need to understanding how the API work. One of them is ChatGPT. Sorry, Watson X, and also ChatGPT. Actually, both of them are integrated. So if you want to use any of these Watson X or any other Gen AI automation as part of a workflow, you already have it. And actually, I've done an example. Talking about the first question is real use cases. Talking with a bank here in London, in the UK, is saying, okay, the problem I have is that I want to use this Watson X or Gen AI, but the problem I have now is reducing root cause analysis. Okay, so I have a problem, I want to solve it as fast as possible. So what we did is, okay, so the main problem that they have as well is that you have different kind of level 1 engineer, 2, 3, and then you have the architects. If all the issues go to the level 3 engineers or the architects, you're using very expensive resources to solve problems. Okay, that they can go faster to solve the problem, but how could we is what we call in the industry shift to the left, this kind of resolution, instead of layer 3 or architects level 1 or even level 2. Well, if you could give them the knowledge that the level 3 engineers have, that would be great, obviously. That would be amazing to do.
Sure.
What can we do? Well, if you think about that, if we could document issues, and that's something that we do in any kind of ITSM solution, even it could be with with CloudPad for AI Jobs, so it could be with ServiceNow, with any kind of software or solution. What you could do is, okay, this is the problem, this is the answer. This is the problem, this is the answer. So you already have this database with thousands of entries where you have kind of symptoms, how to fix things, and so on. How can we share that knowledge with the level 1, the level 2 engineers? Well, I'm sure that during their evenings and their afternoons, they'd rather watch Netflix and other things rather than looking at this documentation. So it's going to be very difficult for them to learn these things. However, if you had a artificial intelligence that was able to learn all these things, and when you give them a prompt saying, I have an issue with this, it will give you the answer saying, try these 5, 10 steps. This is possibly the reason why it's happening. That would be amazing. So what we tried with this customer is exactly that. What we do is with rapid infrastructure automation, every time we receive an alert from the network, instead of going directly to ServiceNow to create a ticket saying CPU of this server is high, that doesn't give you too much information. What we did is we went to what's next, get the information, send the prompt, go back to ServiceNow, and then get what we call ticket enrichment. Now you have a lot of information. You have the server is CPU high, but then also you have all this other information.
A lot more context that you would have had to go and gather up yourself through vCenter, through AWS console, through database, digging in, looking through spreadsheets, whatever, right? If you can aggregate that information and pull it together, so you can have it in. I hate this expression, but everybody has to use it. One single pane of glass, right? I can make better decisions based on that data than saying, oh boy, high CPU. Now I got to figure out where I got to go to figure out what the next step is. So yeah, it's getting in front of all that stuff with more context immediately. I like that.
And I also have another example. I mean, soon is going to be the Mobile World Congress, actually in Barcelona, when we talk it's not only for telcos. 60% of the companies are telcos, meaning that 40% are not telcos, even though it's a telco event. And one of the things that we're talking is how we can improve operations with GenAI. So similar to this, instead of server CPU is high, what we did is that in mobile communications, something very important is the weather. So what we did is that when we detect that there is an issue on the network, on the radio access network, before we raise the case again in ServiceNow saying we have a problem with the radio, what we do is we check the weather. So one of the problems I did is, okay, based on this location, because I know the location of the cell site that is reporting the issue, based on this location, tell me from 0 to 10, which score the weather is. Being 0, very bad, 10, very good. And also considering that the wind is this amount of wind, this humidity, this rain, all these things. We send that to what's next, and they came back saying, look, now the weather is score 4 because of blah, 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 blah. We get that input, that output, we send it to the ticket, and now when the operator sees the information, say, now I understand we're having issues because maybe it's pouring down, there is a lot of rain, that's why we're having issues. So the way to fix it is increasing the power of the radio or whatever it is. Or maybe the problem is with the clouds or something like that. So again, what we're doing is giving the operators more tools to reduce the mean time to repair, being able to understand faster the root cause of the problem and then fix the issue. If I receive the ticket and I have to go to the weather account on the weather website, check for the location, see the map, sometimes they are not accurate either. Again, we are wasting time here.
Yeah, it makes me think of the classic situation, like, I've been in a support role before in my life, right? Where I'll get a ticket from a customer and it just says, can't get into my laptop, So then you go back and forth. You ask the simple questions, right? Like, okay, cool. Is your laptop on, right? It's so to be able to take that back and forth, that conversation, that iteration, to gather the data that you need to get to that root cause ahead of time. It feels so powerful to me. And I know that if I was in that role, I would want that information right away, at my fingertips, because then I can solve this problem, put it away, and move on to the next one, rather than get a little piece of information, move on to the next one, get a little piece of information, then loop back around and go through that cycle over and over again. I think that was the right term, that mean time to resolution, much shorter. I don't have to go through that loop anymore. So I like that. That's powerful. And that's that I don't necessarily know whether that's specific to RIA, right? Like that's not the value add here. What you're saying is that enabled, using RIA enabled you to take a workflow that would have had to go through those iterations and connect different parts of all of the infrastructure into that one very much more enriched ServiceNow object, so that I could get to that mean time to resolution faster.
So imagine that you are the NOC manager and you want to onboard what's next or any other GenAI technology to enrich the tickets. Now, I have no Python scripts. I don't have any kind of automation skills. How can I help my team? Well, a solution like this is very simple. What you do is like you create a workflow that when any monitoring solution tells me that there is a problem, I'm going to call what's next. That is a building block. It's a building block that says what's next, text generation. As simple as that. You just drag and drop and define which is the language model that I want to get. You can select it from a drop-down list. I'm going to select this one. This is the prompt. Actually, it comes from the message. This is the number of tokens. Actually, something that we did is use more or less tokens based on the severity. So one of the fields that we receive is severity. If it's a P1, yes, spend as many tokens as you want. If it's a P3, spend very few tokens because it's going to be expensive. So that NOC manager is going to be empowered to create, or it's going to be, let's say, autonomous to create the automation by itself. It doesn't have to depend with anyone. It doesn't have to learn what's next. Anyone can do it. That's what we always say, that this solution, rapid infrastructure automation, democratizes the access to automation, because now you don't have to be an expert on anything.
Access to automation. I like that.
Yeah. Anyone can access to automation. Anyone can enjoy the power of automation.
Yeah, that's great.
Is there like a level of like machine learning built into that too? Like, I guess inevitably humans are kind of building out these automations, but does something like a watsonx sort of over time sort of understand where maybe you can even optimize this workflow further and give you recommendations to say like, hey, maybe we can make this even better by cutting out this kind of, you got all this extra stuff in here that doesn't really need to be there, kind of, or is that a future state kind of deal?
Funny that you mentioned that, because this is something that we are reviewing. Not possibly from the point of view of optimizing, that is a very good point, but from the point of view of starting. Because the problem that we have sometimes that, yeah, this looks very easy, but imagine that today I give you the platform saying, off you go, start working with this. Obviously, the first time we see something, we are just scared. I don't know where to start. What do I do? That's what we did, and we are working with customers on this, is we created a GenAI platform that builds the workflows for you. So instead of having to start building blocks, adding the block for the loop, for the if, for the text generation for what's next, what you will do is in plain English, in a prompt say, I want to create a workflow that connects to this system, gets the list of devices, goes through the devices, gets the devices that are broken and fix them, something like that. You type that in the prompt and is using what's next, it will create the workflow for you. So we haven't arrived to this kind of optimization level that reviews the content and gives you optimization, but we have started with the starting point. Let's give you a head start. Let's give you something to start working with, and then it's going to be very easy to edit, manipulate, add things, and so on. But yeah, we are working with that, so you can ask in plain English to create a workflow, and the platform will give you something that you can start working on.
So that eliminates the barrier of entry completely then, because you're just using natural language processing at that point to just say, I want it to do this when this happens. I don't know, like you said, I don't know what language is written in. I don't know all the frameworks. That's for you to build for me, and it just does it. That's great. I mean, technology at the end of the day, right? Like we kind of get all wrapped up in it, but the whole purpose of technology is to make life easier, right? That's at the because otherwise there's no point, And so it sounds like
very specific to automation, right? Automation, that's the entire intent.
That is it.
So that I don't have to do click ops all day long.
Right. It's good. It's a good point. Question for you, just in terms of like, we always try to make these episodes also kind of valuable for the folks who are selling, or tech sellers, or software sellers. But like, what is a good question? So I don't, like, say I'm coming in. I'm not a professional with RIA. I'm not an expert, but I want to have a conversation with a customer to kind of uncover, whether or not this is going to be a good fit. Like what are like just some high level questions that folks can kind of have in the back of their mind when they're approaching these conversations with customers?
Actually, this is a very interesting question. Actually, a few minutes ago, I was talking with my colleague Emily, that is the sales leader for network management in EMEA, and we were asking the same question. What kind of question should I ask to the customers? And when I replied to her, I said, the problem, obviously we'll ask, do you have automation? Are you working with automation? But the problem with that question is that every single company will say, yes, we are working with automation. Because everyone has something. They have this kind of weird Python scripts running in a test lab, or maybe they have something more elaborated. They're using Ansible, they're using Terraform. So everyone is using automation. So the question that I recommended her is, and everyone, is how far or where are you in your automation journey? Because that question, okay, I started, but I'm sure I haven't finished yet. So where are you? Are you playing around? You have some silos already covered? Do you have some missing or some gaps there? So that would be probably the first question. Where are you in your automation journey? And from there, I can see, okay, I'm automated all this area, but it's true that in infrastructure provisioning or network provisioning or IT assist or any other area, I'm having some gaps there. That question will open the door and say, okay, how are you doing? What do you want to automate from there? Where are you spending more of the time? Because if you know that you're spending more of the time on ticket resolution, okay, we can use Watson X or any other kind of automation to help you with that. But the main question I mentioned is, where are you in your automation journey?
Yeah,
because it's a journey. It never stops.
Yeah, for sure. And so in the spirit of what you're saying there with that journey, let's say I've got all these Python scripts over here, a bunch of PowerShell scripts over there. I'm very mature. I've got all of that stuff built. I just sit back and watch it go like, wow, I did a great job. How do I go from that to what you're talking about, use RIA? Is there like a transition plan to go from these manual scripts where if I won the lottery and poor Joe had to pick up my Python, he would go, I know Python. I'm really good at this. I don't know what Gregg's doing here, right? So how could I transform what I did into what you're doing so that Joe can pick it up when I win the lottery?
Absolutely. That's a very good
Congratulations, Gregg, as well, just on the lottery there. Just want to throw it out.
I won't forget about you, Joe.
He's still here, so
yeah.
He's not going to let it change him. I know that about Gregg, and that's the important thing,
I'll still be here for Joe.
So, going back to the question, it's a very good question. Yeah. So we have two things here. First is in the short term. In the short term, I don't want to rip and replace what I have. I have these amazing scripts that are written in Python or any other language. Maybe have Ansible playbooks that are very good. Maybe I even have Ansible Tower, or AAP, as it's called right now. So I don't want to get rid of that. This is working. And we always say that if it's not broken, don't need to fix. And obviously, this is something that we know with rapid infrastructure automation. That's why, as part of the workflows, we don't have only the integration with all these different APIs and all these different tools. We have integrations with Python, with Go, with JavaScript, with Ansible, with Terraform, and with lots of other automation tools. Meaning that if you have a very nice Python script, what you can do is drag and drop the Python building block, copy and paste the content there, and now you have a workflow that is running exactly that same Python script. And then from then, you can expand it, because before what you used to do is run something and then run something else. Well, what you do in the workflow is you run defense Python block, and then you run something else. And it could be an Ansible playbook, it could be a Terraform playbook, it could be a JavaScript script, anything you want. So you are not deleting everything you have, because it's amazing. It's added as part of a new workflow, And then you will add governance. So when you win the lottery, first of all, I hope that you remember about us. But when you win the lottery, then someone else can pick it up because you will see that you have the workflow there and you will have the governance, you will have the permissions, you will have everything. So you don't delete and get rid of what you built. You will add it as part of the platform and you will enhance it. You will make it even better because now we're giving you more possibilities in terms of governance, expanding the use cases, adding more automations, and so on. And also, everyone else can use it as well. We mentioned before that now that we say that is in production, everyone else can use it as well.
And that's a great point, because I would assume, and this is just an assumption here, that that's probably one of the first objections that you hear when talking to a customer.
Yeah.
I have already done all this. Like, that sounds really cool and nice, but like, I don't need it because I have this library of stuff. But to your point, like, we're not suggesting that you scrap that. In fact, you shouldn't, right?
No.
Let's use that to enrich this, right? Make this better. Make it so that when Gregg wins the lottery, everything doesn't just fall apart because, there's a single point of failure, right?
Or worse, you stop automating, right? I lost the automation guy. I can't possibly automate anything anymore. And now I'm going back to ClickOps and I got to hire 3 more people.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like, I can see it happen.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's the first kind of objection. That's why I say, I never ask, do you have automation? Because everyone will say yes.
Yeah.
But the second question, when we say, yes, you don't need to get rid of everything, you can do it with this. The second question is, okay, now I have rapid infrastructure automation and I have Ansible. Where do I build my automations? And obviously the question is, so the answer is, it depends. If you have, for example, typical configuration management requirements, possibly Ansible is going to do a very good job. It doesn't mean that you cannot do it in rapid infrastructure automation. You can do it. But possibly the platform, the framework that we have in Ansible is going to be a better solution. But if what you want to do is an integration with ServiceNow, even though you can do it with Ansible as well, possibly rapid infrastructure automation is going to be a better fit. So yeah, there is an overlapping, like pretty much all the tools that we have. But depending on the use case, it makes more sense to do it in one place and another. And if you have both platforms, then you can choose. And maybe what you choose is do it in Ansible, but then add that Ansible playbook inside a workflow, because then you can orchestrate between different things. So that's one of the main kind of questions that we receive. Okay, what do I do now? I have both tools. Where do I do it? Is do it in the tool that makes more sense for you.
Yeah.
Sign me up. I mean, you've sold me. I'm honestly, you have a very good way of making this sound sort of very obvious and easy, and that's great.
Not easy. Simple.
Look, I must say, I receive this feedback lots of times, but trust me, it's not because of me. I don't make it sound easy. The solution, the tool, it's easy. So it's not me, trust me.
And he's humble too. Stop it. You're making Gregg and I look really bad. All right? Jeez.
You're the full package, Raul.
You are 100%, dude. Raul, honestly, I mean, this is great. I mean, we've been chatting now for almost an hour at this point, and it's kind of flown right by. I feel like there's a whole bunch more that you could share with us. And so maybe if you're open for it, I know you're in the UK, but we can find times that work for all of us. We'd love to have you back on to dive deeper, or if you want to maybe even showcase the platform and pull it up on screen so people can get an idea of what it looks like. We'd be happy to do that if you're open to it, of course.
I love to.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, yeah, for now, I mean, I think we've covered quite a bit, and I again thank you to everyone.
I like it.
Yeah. Thank you to Raul for joining us and for being awesome, and thanks for everyone who watched today. Always appreciate that. That's right. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, the whole 9 yards. Do all the things. Yeah. Maybe we should build some automation for that. I don't know. We'll talk about it later. But listen, if you're interested in hearing more or learning more about any of the RIA stuff, any of the network suite of products that IBM has, check out our community pages. There'll be a ton of great information for you there. And as always, we'll see you on the next one.
That's right.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Later.